Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. It's just after 10 p.m. in New Delhi, 6:30 in the evening in Paris and 12:30 in the afternoon in Washington, D.C. And you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. Over the next 90 minutes, we'll get you the latest from Nice in France, the first leg of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's two-nation European tour of France and Slovakia. We'll be joined by our correspondent in Nice. We will also be joined by our guests who will put this visit in its proper context for you. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on way to a two-nation European tour of France and Slovakia. The tour aims to deepen strategic ties and boost innovation, trade and multilateral cooperation. On the first leg of his visit in Nice, Prime Minister Modi will hold talks with France's President Emmanuel Macron on Sunday. They will review the India-France Special Global Strategic Partnership that focuses on defense, AI, space and emerging technologies. They will jointly inaugurate the Bharat Innovates 2026 event, showcasing more than 120 Indian startups alongside French and global partners as part of the India-France Year of Innovation. Prime Minister Modi will then make a historic first ever state visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Slovakia from 14th to 16th June. He will meet Prime Minister Robert Fico and call on President Peter Pellegrini to expand cooperation in trade, investment, automobiles and railways. His European tour will conclude with the Prime Minister's participation at the G7 summit in Aix-les-Bains and further engagements in Paris. At the G7 summit, India will not only speak for itself, but also give a voice to the aspirations of the Global South. And looking ahead to the next quarter century, India and France have unveiled their Horizon 2047 roadmap. Now, this framework charts the alliance leading up to its historic 50-year milestone, with the India-France Year of Innovation taking center stage. Our next report explores the deep ties between the two nations and what the future holds for this strategic partnership.
The India-France Year of Innovation 2026, announced during the state visit of President Emmanuel Macron to India in January 2024, marks a bold new chapter in the strategic partnership between France and India. At its core lies the idea that innovation is a vital driving force in Indo-French ties. Well, France established diplomatic relations with India as soon as it gained independence on August 15, 1947. In 1998, the relationship was elevated to the level of a strategic partnership, establishing France as India's oldest strategic partner. And in 2023, on its 25th anniversary, President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Narendra Modi decided to renew and deepen the Indo-French strategic partnership for a further 25 years through the adoption of the Horizon 2047 roadmap. It's under this broader agenda of orienting the bilateral relationship towards the future that Year of Innovation is taking place. India-France Year of Innovation 2026. The initiative is structured around 4 pillars, in which France and India are uniquely positioned. The aim is to develop joint solutions to shared challenges. Key pillars: aerospace, health, well-being and food, sustainable development and energy transition, cultural and creative industries. Launched during the India-France Year of Innovation, Bharat Innovates 2026 aims to accelerate India's deep tech ecosystem and strengthen its position as a global innovation powerhouse. The India-France Year of Innovation not only symbolizes progress but also underscores the coming together of two great nations, two rich cultures and two innovation ecosystems, because the year 2047 will mark three symbolic milestones. 100 years of India's independence, 100 years of diplomatic relations between India and France, and 50 years India-France strategic partnership. Hence, setting sights on the future, both countries have adopted the Horizon 2047 roadmap, which aims to map out the alliance's trajectory as it reaches its 50-year milestone, of which India-France Year of Innovation is a crucial part.
Now, excitement is running high among the Indian community in Nice as Prime Minister Modi is set to arrive in the French Riviera city. Members of the Indian diaspora gathered ahead of his visit, expressing pride and anticipation at the opportunity to welcome the Prime Minister. Take a listen.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Nice. I have with me some excited members of Indian diaspora who are waiting to meet Prime Minister. Let's hear from them. What are their thoughts?
Modi ji being here for the Bharat Innovates makes me immense pride for my country, and I really feel proud to give a hit for our country and be part of this big event and be part of this amazing evening today.
Nothing like this has ever happened during my time here, so it's incredibly exciting, and it's lovely to see so many people from the community who live in and around Nice to be present today to give our Prime Minister a big welcome.
He has done extremely well in terms of international relations, and I'm a big fan, as you can see.
I'm excited that Modi is coming to Nice.
I have come to meet Mr. Narendra Modi. He is one of the greatest Prime Minister of our India.
Welcome Modi ji to France. I'm here to watch Modi ji.
So we see a cross-section of Indian diaspora from different parts of India, from different parts of France, all gathered here to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who should be reaching shortly, with camera person Aniket Dubey, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India.
Getting emotional that he is here, and I want to thank him personally for his amazing win in West Bengal and the way he is coming and promoting all of us.
I'm very big fan of Modi ji. My family support Modi ji a lot, and there are too many things Modi ji is doing for the nation, which is really good. And Jai Hind.
Very excited to see Mr. Prime Minister Modi, and very happy to wish him and meet and greet.
We are very excited to see PM Narendra Modi, and my son, he's going to see him for the first time, so it's really amazing experience it's going to be.
I'm very excited to meet Modi ji.
It's very nice to see Mr. Modi here, because it's a matter of pride that he's coming here, and looking forward to the conference also that he will be inaugurating tomorrow. And all the Indian community is very happy to see him in southern France, in Nice.
I love Modi ji.
This is my second time I'm meeting Modi ji, and my baby is also second time, so we are really excited. Thank you, Modi ji, for all what you do.
All right, joining us is Dr. Sheetal Sharma from the School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. Dr. Sharma, welcome to this special broadcast. Also joining me from Nice is my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh. Let me go across to Shubhendu first. Shubhendu, how is the visit coming along? All right, I'm told we've lost that link with Shubhendu. We'll reconnect with him as soon as we can. But going across, Dr. Sharma, as I was mentioning, this is a symbolic and substantive visit to France by all reckoning. What do you make of the French leg of the Prime Minister's two-nation European tour?
Ramesh, Prime Minister's visit to France is something which is, a great step towards strengthening India-France relationship, and it has always been something which is substantive in nature. As you just mentioned, that it's not just symbolic. It is actually, I would say, that among all the countries of the European Union, or Europe for that matter, or for that matter, even the Western countries, France happens to be one of the most reliable, trusted partner that India has in the Western hemisphere. Now, what is very interesting about this particular trip is that this is coming after a short while. Prime Minister went to 3-4 countries last fortnight, and then after that it comes again as on the sidelines of the G7 summit also. But at the same time, he is visiting France and Slovakia. And if you look at the themes of these visits happening recently in the last month and this month also, the theme is revolving around India's developmental agenda, and where France figures into that. France is one of the most trusted, reliable partner that India has in the Western world for a long period of time, because France and India are on the same page related to many of the things. The themes which bind India and France relationship together are about their strategic autonomy, about non-interference, and about not interfering with the alliances of the respective countries. So what brings these two countries together is the shared values, the respect they have for each other, and the reliability, that the reliability question that exists between these two countries. If you look at the history of the relationship, we have faced large number of challenges, during nuclear test or during Ukraine war or many other things. But despite those irritants, which are not very big ones, I would say, in India-France relationship, both the countries have maintained the momentum. Although, of course, I sometimes feel that this is quite under-acknowledged or under-represented relationship that we have with many other bilaterals, if I compare India-France bilateral. But despite the fact that this is underrated, under-acknowledged, underrepresented, under-reported relationship, this is one of the best relationships that we have with any country in the Europe.
Right. Dr. Sharma, do stay on. Let me bring in my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh on this broadcast. He joins us from Nice. Shubhendu, how's the visit coming along? Fill us in on the latest.
With the latest is, Ramesh, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's plane has just landed in Nice just a moment ago. Where I am at the moment, this is going to be the venue of the diaspora welcome for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. A special display of Indian culture will also be presented at the hotel. It's a unique surprise, and we'll wait for it to happen as Prime Minister arrives here at the hotel. But so far, the focus has been, it appears, on technology and innovation. France happens to be one of the oldest strategic partners of India. And now for the 21st century, this partnership is maturing into one of the most potent technology partnerships to look out for in the world, especially in the domain of artificial intelligence, critical technologies, and now also startups and innovators, with Bharat Innovates being the focus of this visit. There are also going to be bilateral engagements. Remember, Nice also has a very interesting connect with Blue Economy. United Nations Ocean Conference was hosted here in the year 2025. So in that sense, there is a lot on the plate for the two leaders to discuss and take forward. All eyes for now on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival at the hotel, where a special diaspora welcome awaits him. Ramesh?
Indeed. So just to recap the news coming in from Nice as we speak, as Shubhendu was reporting, the Prime Minister Modi has landed in Nice, and we are standing by for the latest visuals to come from his welcome ceremony that will take place at his hotel in the city. Now, Shubhendu, since tech is in the air, what can you tell us about the Indian startup that will take part in Bharat Innovates? Is Nice looking forward to hosting this maiden iteration of the event?
Oh, absolutely. Remember, it's a maiden edition of Bharat Innovates 2026. In that sense, it's also happening outside of India, not in India. So it talks about the kind of confidence, rapport that the two nations, that the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Macron, share. Talking about Bharat Innovates in particular, over 120 top startups of India, particularly those who are excelling in the domain of deep tech in diverse areas, from ocean technology to health tech to AI and quantum computing. Diverse areas are being represented by these startups. Not just that, it is also a key moment for India's higher education institutions. Over 20 premier higher education institutions will be showcasing their innovation as well. So in that sense, Bharat Innovates is not just an ordinary exhibition of Indian talent and potential, but really a gateway for Indian startups and Indian innovators to go out and make new connections and collaborations with the world. There are top investors, venture capitalists, who are also looking forward to this event to really be able to connect with the top Indian talent. Remember, India has one of the world's largest startup ecosystems and is also known very well to be able to upscale technology and its implementation at population scale. In these changing times, the world is looking for partners that can produce solutions at scale. And India is in that very, very special position. And France, which is itself an important economic and innovation powerhouse of Europe, is India's partner as this very special journey of Indian innovators and startups begins. Ramesh?
All right, let's leave it there for now, Shubhendu. We'll keep coming back to you for more as we go along. Thank you. Appreciate it. Right, we still have with us our guest, Dr. Sheetal Sharma from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Dr. Sharma, now Prime Minister Modi and President Macron have elevated the India-France ties to what is known as a special global strategic partnership. Now, for the benefit of viewers who are not familiar with the intricacies of the issue at hand, beyond diplomatic phrasing, what specific parameters set this relationship apart from France's other Asian partnerships?
Ramesh, I want to add one thing to what you just asked about the special global strategic partnership. And this is also related to the kind of discussion that we were having about Bharat Innovates.
Right.
If we look at the recent statement made by President Macron, and he has very categorically said, I quote, that it is not that if India innovates, it is important that who will innovate with India. The statement itself carries so much of weight, indicating that India is becoming an innovation hub. It is not a question about that whether India has capacity to innovate. It is in fact a statement that indicates that who is going to align with India or support India or be with India or collaborate or cooperate with India in order to lead the innovations. What are we are talking about in Bharat Innovation 2026. Now, what is very interesting is that there are 13 themes around which 120 startups are happening. And since I belong to a very prestigious higher education institution in India, I was very happy to see that all IITs are participating along with certain other important science and technology institutions in India. They are partnering and they are showcasing their work. The involvement of students, scholars, researchers is something which is amazing, particularly in this event. Now, this reflects, and this is a reflection of India's special global strategic partnership, which means that there is more intensification to the relationship between the two countries. It is not just simple bilateral relationship, it involves much more than that. Now, what is that much more that we add to strategic partnership? Along with the strategic autonomy, it is about trusting, it is about respecting, it is about helping, or it is about also supporting the foreign policy decisions when it comes to trade and technology. It is not just buy and a seller relationship. It is innovating together. It is manufacturing together. When we talk of strategic partnership and a special global strategic partnership, it also involves our individual positions or our perceptions about global order, about rule-based order, and how do we together look on certain things which are happening all across the world. Currently, we are undergoing a chaos. Currently, we see regional wars in certain areas, which are very impactful in terms of their outcomes on the entire world. Look at the energy crisis generated by the blockade of Hormuz. So all these things are very important, and this is where the strategic partnership or the special global strategic partnership holds significance, because it gives us a platform for the two countries to come together, converge on how do they look at the global order. So this is why it is of deep significance for both the countries to have this perspective, the convergence over certain issues, international, national, and at the same time, whatever is happening is not just at the level of the basic beginner understanding about each other's trade, about their technology, about what we give or what we export, but it is more about that how this relationship can be meaningful, impactful, and how both can collaborate beyond the transactional nature of the bilateral relationship.
Indeed, since technology is the overarching theme or the preeminent theme of the Prime Minister's visit to Nice, let me ask you a follow-up question to the Bharat Innovates 2026 event, Dr. Sharma. The Prime Minister Modi and President Macron will jointly inaugurate this event in Nice. Now, with India pushing its deep tech and startup ecosystems into Europe, in your estimation, what are the primary regulatory or security barriers that Indian tech firms face when entering the European Union?
if you look at these 13 theme areas which are being showcased in the event, these are all related to the issues about energy, about blue economy, about AI, computation, health, and all the other areas which are related to our developmental agenda. But when it comes to what kind of barriers, or the, I won't say barriers, but the challenges that these startups are going to face, there are a number of areas from where we start understanding these. The ecosystem, the entire ecosystem, which I would say that India must learn from Western countries in the process of research and development, something which is very important, because here sometimes when we talk about patenting, or we talk about the copyright issues or intellectual property rights, there are a large number of areas where strict rules and regulations are there which hinder the kind of ecosystem that should get the desired pace or momentum. Point number one. Number two is about the data regulation. European Union has strict regulations about data protection, the GDPR, which is very strongly protecting the data identity of people, accessibility to data. But India requires a kind of flexible norms towards it. The third is related to the technology transfer and the localization, which is also one of the challenge, I would say, which is existing in the defense sector cooperation, that we want transfer of technology and localization. The area where we tend to see that we are going to benefit more from it. The next aspect is that more of a collaboration which must come from the two distinctive operating systems, you can say the institutional or the bureaucratic setups in which we operate, about access to technology, or you say about the regulations which gives us some amount of permits to experiment or to collaborate. So there are certain institutional, bureaucratic, academic, and the data-related challenges which we may have to wade across. But at the same time, these are not as insurmountable as they might seem to be.
Okay.
Because the intention of these two partners is clear, that they come together, collaborate, and take this forward in the right direction. What is very interesting is, as I was mentioning earlier also, the 13 themes that we are talking about, directly, indirectly, remotely, and basically, all of them relate to the developmental aspirations that India has. And they are not just about the developmental aspirations to contribute towards greater GDP or rising standards of living, but these are also addressing the concerns. And the concerns are addressed not just in terms of, say, for example, you import some technology, or you import Western solutions to your local problems. It is more about that how India can innovate and find local solutions to maybe global problems, which can then further be transferred to the global south. So Ramesh, in total, I would say that this is a very strong foundation that India and France can offer together. First, to boost the kind of startup ecosystem. Next, to collaborate, overcome the initial hurdles or inhibition that is there. Funding is also one of the very important areas where we see funding, at the same time the access to lab, the equipment, and the large number of things. And it is not just the academia which is part of this event, it is also of the venture capitalists, those who see that there's a lot of potential in these technologies to come up, these startups to get successful in order to find solutions. And I would once again add to it the real-time problem about disaster management, about resilience, about AI, about computing, about health, education, you name it, and it is there in the list. So this is very encouraging for Indians to showcase their not just talent, but also to learn from the Western the template and the structures that they have, institutional structures that have always been conducive for development of science and technology and scientific tempo.
Indeed, as we approach the end of the first half hour of this broadcast, Dr. Sharma, may I take a moment to again recap the news coming in from Nice. As my colleague Shubhendu was reporting there, Prime Minister Modi has landed in Nice. We'll get to the latest visuals as and when they become available. Right, Professor Sharma, again, since you referred to a whole lot of bilateral areas specific to India and France, which both sides could explore or pursue going forward. Defense is obviously one of the key pillars of the India-France relationship. In that context, Professor Sharma, moving beyond direct equipment purchases such as the Rafale fighter jets or possibly the Scorpene submarines or other defense hardware. I'm told that the focus has shifted towards local assembly and technological transfer. Now, what real-world challenges face French companies trying to navigate India's domestic manufacturing requirements?
Ramesh, if you talk about the hardcore domestic or the challenges that these companies can face, a defense expert would be a better person to answer those
I understand,
issues.
but just to give our viewers a sense of where things stand, where the initiative lies, when we talk about Make in India or tech transfer or to make India a defense manufacturing hub, what or how can France fit in to India's requirements, and are there challenges that French companies might be facing in taking this forward?
Absolutely. Now, I would perceive it from this perspective that what challenges these companies can face.
Right.
Number one, that certainly this has gone beyond just supply or demand kind of transaction that is happening in defense area. Point number two is that when we talk about defense transfer of technology, localization, and also setting up the plants or the industry that can, one example that comes to my mind is about the Tata Airbus collaboration, which is going to be the first ever private sector helicopter manufacturing in India. And then there is also a creation of a joint advanced technology developmental group for emerging technologies and critical areas. These are the areas where actually we need to look forward to the capabilities and expertise of these Western companies to come and implement that in India.
Right.
Of course, we have labor. Of course, we have sources of funding. We have the necessary wherewithal to set these up. But at the level of the high-class engineering, the production systems and the quality and the standards that which we need to maintain in order for these defense production, this is something which is going to be a kind of learning exercise for India also,
Right.
and to for these companies to set up initially. The second is about the production capacities, and these capacities have once again to be analyzed in a decade-long framework. It is not just tomorrow you desire, you wish, and you start producing at a grand scale. India, first of all, is also thinking about production for its own militarization and fortification of India's defense capabilities, but at the same time also in future targets about export-oriented production systems. So we have to see that how gradually these two can combine.
Right.
India is new in terms of opening private sector for defense production. So there is certainly going to be the issues related to standards, to quality, to checks, to procurement,
Inertia,
to
maybe?
licensing. Inertia.
A resistance to change, perhaps?
Not a resistance to change, because change has already been, the ball has been set rolling.
Okay.
However, the learning process for the private
Right.
sector in such a sensitive area is something which is of course going to be some, a challenge, but I once again think
Indeed.
it is not insurmountable. Yeah.
Fair enough. Professor Sharma, when we talk about defense, one can't help but also talk about maritime security. Now, we've seen President Macron and other European leaders talk about stepping up naval cooperation in the Strait of Hormuz, given what is happening in that part of the world. When you talk about Gulf maritime security, do you visualize or anticipate India taking part in such operations to secure the sea lines of communication?
This has been a concern between India and France for a long period of time, and we both converge on this. And this is I would say that Iran and blockade of Hormuz has been the recent one, but the Indo-Pacific has been happening for a long period of time. And France is a resident power in Indo-Pacific, and the kind of military muscle flexing by China in the South China Sea is something which is a cause of concern for us. Now, when we look at Indo-Pacific or open or free trade and sea lines, it is something very important and brings both India and France together. Now, what in this area and how do they converge? France is a resident power of Indo-Pacific. World's almost 55% of population stays here. World's economies like ASEAN, South Asian economies, Korea, Japan, China are located here. France has its own interest in keeping this freedom of navigation without any interruption. And India also is very concerned about that, the South China Sea and the trade routes through which maximum of its maritime, trade is happening is not dominated by a country which tries to dominate or play as a hegemon in the region. And now the same thing is happening in the Gulf region, where Hormuz blockade is something which is very pressing concern. This is where sometimes a small friction can come up in the sense that France tends to criticize Russia for its invasion on Ukraine, or stands by the kind of attack or supports to certain extent the Iranian attack. But this is something where India and France do not see eye to eye, in terms of either supporting Russia or condemning Russia. So these are the areas where these two countries might have a slight difference of opinion on the stand about Ukraine or Russia favoring or not favoring, or sanctions against Russia. But when it comes to a general understanding about open sea routes or freedom of navigation, going by the rule of law, international order, peace, and all, then there is absolute convergence between the two. And both of them want, the peace to come as quickly as possible. The French have also been forced to think, and in these lines, because of the kind of shocks that Trump has given to NATO. And now he has been saying that he's going to cut down the supply of weapons and aircrafts to NATO to 1/3. And this is something which is pressing the European countries to come together.
Right.
In some circles, it is also interpreted that this kind of a forceful act of withdrawing from NATO has also forced the European countries to come together and find its own foot and or its own strength in defense and security. So this is something which runs parallel in international relations, Ramesh. I would say that how bilaterals are defined by your internal interest, your individual interest, at the same time regional and global interest. Number two, how your alignments with other regional powers or other regional issues also define your mutual interest.
Indeed.
And at the same time, where do you converge and where do you diverge? But are these differences so strong, or are these so pertinent that they tend to impact your convergence? I don't think this is there between India and France.
Right, Professor Sharma, as we enter the second half of our broadcast, we have a lot of ground more to cover: space, civil nuclear energy cooperation, Indo-Pacific, and so on, and the G7 as well. But I want you to take a moment to give our viewers a historical perspective of India-France relations. I ask you this because France, by any reckoning, has been a dependable strategic partner for India. One can go back to 1998 when India conducted those nuclear tests. President Chirac at the time was the only Western leader to not sanction or condemn or slam India for conducting those tests. And that thing has continued since then, from President Chirac to President Macron today. But the point I want to ask is, President Macron will demit office next year. Can we expect the ties to remain at the same level of momentum going forward? Has it matured enough to go beyond personalities on either side?
Of course, Ramesh, you're very right in saying that irrespective of who holds the office and for how long, the India-France partnership has been, a very deep, warm, cordial for a long period of time. And this is a time, 1998, remember, India had just started with its experimentation of liberalization, privatization, and globalization, what we say as LPG. At that time only, the disintegration of USSR and all other countries of Central and Eastern European world, they were trying to become members of the European Union. That is the time, at that point of time, when India was not a power to reckon with. I would say India had just started its developmental journey and was, finding its feet in the global order or on the global high table. At that point of time, also France supported India because of the kind of convergence over values which we just discussed about, the strategic autonomy and the internal matters. They respect each other and their decisions regarding even the tests which were conducted, they were sanctioned by the Western community, but it was seen by the France as something which is an interest of India's security, India's strength, and its regional equation. So I would say, I would reiterate the fact that despite the fact that it has been a long relationship, various presidents have come and gone, The same may happen in future as well, 10 years down the line. But the ball has been set rolling in the right direction, and it is going to take, a step up in future, not lose the momentum that is there. Sometimes I feel, the kind of pace and the energy which is required in this relationship may not that be high, but it is something beyond hype. This is something which is related to hope, actual delivery, and expectation from each other. So even if you don't hype the relationship a lot on media and sometimes not give as much coverage as it is giving to India-US relationship or any small thing that happens with the US, it does not require that kind of hype, but at least this is, I personally feel, it is very substantive in nature. Although, of course, under exploited to certain extent, because if you look at the trade statistics, which sometimes we take as one of the fundamental indicator of the kind of warmth or the deepness of relationship, but trade to certain extent, yes or no, may be seen as an indicator that how deep are our relationship, which hovers around 13 billion euros only. But there is a scope, there is a potential for us to step up in that area as well. But apart from trade, if you look at the way France has supported India's claim to UNSC permanent seat, it has supported India's ability to conduct nuclear tests. It has been an all-weather friend. It has expressed very clearly against terrorism, the kind of problems that India is suffering.
Right.
So I would say, that this is something which is very important, an important partner for a long period of time, and would continue to be in the same direction.
Right, fair enough. May I pause here to welcome another equally accomplished lady on this panel. Ambassador Veena Sikri now joins us for her take on the India-France strategic partnership. Ambassador Sikri, welcome to this broadcast. May I hear your take on the India-France special global strategic partnership, and in particular the ongoing visit to Nice by Prime Minister Modi? Ambassador Sikri.
I think that, the India-France special global strategic partnership is really something unique. It is very unique, as we were just discussing. It's really a unique instance where France has stood by India's side and India has cooperated and worked so well with France for all these decades. I myself have spent close to 4 years in Paris, and I tell you, the warmth and affection between the people of France and India and the cultural civilizational understanding between them, it's really something to be seen, to be believed. And I think the way in which Prime Minister Modi's visit has been planned this time really reflects this dynamic and complementary relationship, the complementarity between the relationships of the two countries. So right now, Prime Minister Modi is in Nice, and he's going to have the discussions with President Macron, review the relationship since they last met in February, and also to inaugurate this tremendous exhibition, Bharat Innovates, which is taking place as a part of the India-France Year of Innovation. There was a time earlier when I was handling this, when there was the India-French Year of Culture. There was the Festival of India in France and the Festival of France in India. Today we are having the same festivals, but we are focusing on technological innovation, on high tech, on renewable energy. And honestly, President Macron has stood by India in all the initiatives that Prime Minister Modi has taken. Even it's the Solar Alliance, the High Tech Initiative, the AI Summit. President Macron was here. So it's been really very, very important. And after inaugurating this Bharat Innovates in Nice, then our Prime Minister is going to Slovakia for 2 days, but then he comes back to Avion, where the G7 summit is being held, and India is a special invitee for the 8th time. So this is quite a remarkable record that, we've been invited consistently. And there's such a special position attached to India. During the G7 summit, our Prime Minister will be having important bilaterals. In fact, the White House has announced that that President Trump will be having a bilateral with Prime Minister Modi. There's an announcement from the White House. And this will be a very important occasion to discuss the present state of the world economy and what the countries can do. And very importantly, when our Prime Minister is at the G7, he will be speaking on behalf of the global South. So, all that India has done in the G20, all that, where the African Union was invited, the voice of the global South, understanding their problems and issues and speaking about them globally. And then Prime Minister Modi will also be going to Paris, where he will be meeting the Indian diaspora and participating in this very high-tech exhibition, Viva Tech, the highest, the most high-tech exhibition held in Europe. And India has a national pavilion at that exhibition. It's going to be among the largest of the national pavilions at that exhibition. So it's a unique opportunity to present India's high-tech achievements in IT, in AI, and others, and to discuss with counterparts in Europe and other countries of the world, and hopefully to conclude a lot of agreements and deals on this matter. So such a comprehensive visit within 5 days, the visit to Slovakia is the first ever by a Prime Minister of India after Slovakia attained, the Slovak Republic became independent in 1993. This is the first visit. So, you can see how it's been so well planned and is taking forward in relationship.
Right. I hate to interrupt you there, Ambassador Sikri. We're getting the latest shots of the Prime Minister's arrival in the French city of Nice. These are the latest visuals coming to you from Nice, where the Prime Minister has reached on the first leg of his two-nation European tour of France and Slovakia. If you're just joining us, these are the latest visuals coming to you from the airport in Nice soon after his plane landed in the city on the first leg of his two-nation European tour of France and Nice. In the welcoming party was the Minister of Higher Education, Research and Space, Mr. Philippe Bastiste. Also present, the Secretary General of the Prefecture of Alpes-Maritimes, Sub-Prefect Mr. Patrick Amosso Adeblay. Also present is the French Ambassador to India, Thiematou, the Mayor of Nice, and the Deputy to the Sub-Director of State Protocol. So, if you're just joining us, Prime Minister Modi has landed in Nice, France, where he will join President Emmanuel Macron on Sunday to jointly inaugurate the maiden edition of Bharat Innovates. Innovation, technology, talent, trust are all in the air as we speak, with both Indian and French sides preparing to elevate and give a more ballast to their bilateral partnership in diverse sectors, including defense, space, civil, nuclear, energy cooperation, the Indo-Pacific, technology, innovation, talent, mobility, and so on. And while we stay on these visuals, Professor Sharma, I know that you are pressed for time. You have other prior commitments. So may I ask you for your quick last concluding comments, especially looking at the complete arc of this European tour spanning the G7, deep tech in France, and a strategic opening in Slovakia. What would be some of the definitive takeaways regarding India's evolving role in Europe's security and economic landscape? Professor Sharma.
Ramesh, there are 3-4 dimensions of this which we can understand in terms of number one, that how India is playing an important role in the emerging global order. Number two, that how India is steadily intensifying its relationship with regional entities, one at the European Union level, at the same time strengthening its bilateral relations with important countries in Europe. Number three is that it's not just the important in the big players in Europe, but with the countries such as Slovakia as well, where India, when Ambassador Sikri was just mentioning about India's invitation to African Union and G20, and the same thing now is, we can apply the same logic here, that it is not just about strengthening their relationships with the big countries in the European Union, but also the countries which are emerging or which are developing, and where there is a scope for India to not just kind of take relationship, but also have a reciprocal relationship in their developmental journey also. This is about the kind of configuration of the relationships between the countries. The second is the content of these relationships. And the content is particularly revolving all around the peace, idea of stability for the world, rule of law, and other things which are now very pressing and much needed in the global discussions, particularly when G7 is there and the important leaders of the world, and where US is actually tilting that the balance towards a kind of chaotic or a disordered situation currently. Point number two, that what role India has in this. India is a country which holds all these or upholds these values of peace, stability, integrity, non-interference, strategic autonomy, and rest of the things. So India gives a semblance to this disorder and expresses its voice in terms of that how these wars which are currently disturbing the balance in the world are creating the problems for rest of the countries, just such as energy crisis immediately after the Iran attack. The third one, I would say, that India also represents, a civilization and a value system. And which is why France is an important factor here. Why? Because the values which India has been practicing for centuries together, they are all, reflected in French Revolution about liberty, equality, fraternity, secularism, and rest of the things about minority rights, rule of law, and other things which are now considered to be modern values, but they have come particularly, I would say, out of this historical event which is called as French Revolution. So both these civilizations, both these countries, they stand for the values which are pertaining to humanity, for upholding these values for a long period of time. So the core content, intent, I would say, structure, and the significance of all this relationship, and particularly Prime Minister's visit to this country, is a multi-dimensional visit, in the sense that it carries a message. It is also about future. It is about the present. It is about shaping the world order. It is about influencing the developmental agenda. It is about helping the G20 countries, about the developing countries, and also attracting world's attention towards, what matters rather than what do they think is important for them.
All right. On that note, Professor Sharma, may I thank you for joining us and sharing your perspectives, your thoughts with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. So if you're just joining us, you're watching the continuing coverage here on DD India of Prime Minister Modi's ongoing visit to Nice in France as part of his two-nation European tour of France and Slovakia. He has landed in Nice and he was welcomed by a welcome party that comprised the Minister of Higher Education, Research and Space, Mr. Philippe Baptiste. Also present, the Secretary General of the Prefecture of Alpes-Maritimes, Mr. Patrick Amosso-Adeble. Also present, the Ambassador of France to India, Thierry Mathot, the Mayor of Nice, Eric Ciotti, and last but not the least, Benoit Schneider, the Deputy to the Sub-Director of State Protocol. Right, we still have with us our guest, Ambassador Veena Sikri. Ambassador Sikri, we still have a lot of ground to cover. We haven't touched upon civil nuclear energy cooperation, defense ties, space, the Indo-Pacific and the G7. Let me start briefly by touching upon defense collaboration. Now, France is a strategic partner, a key defense partner as well. What do you make of the current trajectory of defense partnership, and where do you see the two sides going from here?
I think the defense partnership is very strong because the key question of transfer of technology, the key question, make in India, and now with the Rafale aircraft, the new big deal that has, that is absolutely, on the way, it's on the delivery line, as it were, because it started on the journey. I think the key factor of how the assemblies are going to take place in India, they're going to make in India, for these aircraft, and that is so important for our self-reliance, for our independence, for our Atmanirbharta. This has been France is the one country that has responded the quickest. And similarly, in the Navy field also, submarine field, I think the exchange of technologies between France and India, the understanding that we have from them in this area is something that I think, other than Russia, these are the only two countries I can name who have been the most forthcoming in these areas and the most understanding and partners, strong partners. reliable partners in these areas. As was just being mentioned, even way back when countries were sanctioning India for the nuclear test, France withheld any sanctions. They didn't put any sanctions. So their understanding of India's aspirations and defense requirements and why we need the nuclear program, this has all been such a consistent part of our history of cooperation with France that it really adds a lot to the development of this understanding. And President Macron has really carried forward that tradition very well. And he and Prime Minister Modi have such a special rapport that they do agree to work together on these areas. And I'm very glad that it's working out so well.
Also talking about civil nuclear energy cooperation, about Sikri, bilateral talks have consistently featured plans for small modular reactors. We haven't heard much about the Jaitapur nuclear project as well. And also talking about space cooperation as well. What do you make of the status of cooperation on these two fronts, civil nuclear and space as well?
The small modular nuclear reactors that you just mentioned, I think that is the way out for India for the future because of the great support now for so many global data centers to open in India.
Right.
And some agreements have already been concluded. There are going to be some in Visakhapatnam. We saw the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, welcoming that. Now, for all these data centers, there's a tremendous demand, a tremendous interest. India has the capacity, the training, the skills, the people are there, but the requirements, the enormous requirements of energy and water are something that have to be arranged before the global data centers can become a reality. And so even when President Putin was in India, this question of a small nuclear reactor, modular nuclear reactor was discussed. These are going to be manufactured in situ, whether in France or in Russia, and then come to India and just be installed. And India too is interested in, America also is interested in showing the supplies. India is interested in doing some of this in India itself also. So in due course, we can also manufacture these modular nuclear reactors. So I hope it will go forward because, I think it's been discussed both with France and with Russia. And of course, these technical discussions do take their own time, but I think definitely France would be interested. France has a tremendous, shall I say, impeccable record of the use of civilian nuclear energy.
Indeed.
And they have, EDF, Electricité de France. It's a public sector company. But when I lived there, it was amazing to see that they're so efficient and they have an impeccable record of accident-free performance. Nuclear energy is a big part of their portfolio of supplying energy for all parts of France, and they do so very successfully. So, I think learning from their experience, training with them, exchanging skills on this aspect is a uniquely useful and valuable aspect for India's cooperation with France. So I do hope that a specific, forward movement on this part of the agenda will take place on this visit.
Indeed. So we've spoken about India-France strategic partnership, defense cooperation, civil nuclear energy. We have a lot more ground to cover. Ambassador Sikri, you have to speak about the Indo-Pacific as a area of convergence for both India and France, the diaspora as well, the G7 summit, India-EU ties, and of course Slovakia. But before we do all of that, let me ask you two quick questions on India-France relationship. Now, talking about the Indo-Pacific, Ambassador Sikri, France is a resident Indo-Pacific power. In that context, given their joint statements on space, maritime domain awareness, how are India and France planning to operationalize their maritime strategy to address these shifting security balances in the wider Indo-Pacific region?
I actually I think it's very important, Indo-Pacific cooperation between India and France in the Indo-Pacific, in the region of maritime security. It's very important. Normally, when people are talking about maritime security, you talk about the Quad, you talk about, joint cooperation with Japan, Australia, USA. But I must tell you that India is not waiting for the Quad to come together and come up with some important declaration. India is pursuing its cooperation, its interest in maritime security bilaterally with each of these countries.
Right.
With Japan, with Australia, and separately with France. So, we're ready to do that because we attach great significance. Our Prime Minister's initiatives on Sagar and Mahasagar, security and growth for all in the region and the holistic approach to this security, maritime security. So this is something which is very close to our Prime Minister's heart, and he is going to discuss this very seriously with France. And I think they should be working out specific initiatives to work on this together in the Indo-Pacific. And that is why I think that this is very valuable to do this outside the framework of Quad, and to actually work on this bilaterally. And I think that France and India do have an important attachment to this. So we will discuss all parts, whether it's the Indian Ocean, whether it's the Pacific. We will discuss both. We will discuss opening or maintaining free lanes of sea lanes of communication. Maritime transportation must be, unhindered and free. All these incidents that have happened where, the commercial vessels were attacked in the Gulf of Oman, outside the Straits of Hormuz, and we have lost 3 Indian sailors. So this is a big deal of, a very, very strong feeling of being upset. How did this happen? Even the International Maritime Organization gave a statement, the organization based in London, gave a statement that, the highest importance that they attach is to keeping the free and open sea lanes of communication, having the commercial vessels sailing safely across the seas, no matter what hostilities they are. The commercial vessels must not be attacked, and the civilian commercial vessels must go freely, and the sailors who are on these vessels, civilian, the seafarers, they must be their security and inviolability is very important. So this is an important issue. I'm sure this will be discussed also, that how do we work on this together? We know that all of us are facing the difficulties caused by the situation in West Asia. But, we have to look at the broader picture. Energy security is going to be discussed in this context as well. So, these whole, the situation arising, I'm sure they will be discussing the Ukraine-Russia conflict as well, because these are all very important issues that are disturbing global security. And bilateral disputes, maybe, Ukraine, Russia, or America and Israel attacking Iran, but what about the impact, global impact on energy security, on food security, on sea lanes of communication, on maintaining the navigability, So these are very, very important and significant global issues.
Absolutely.
And look forward to the outcome and the determination by the President of France and the Prime Minister of India on these critical issues.
Indeed. So we are approaching the end of the first hour of our broadcast. We have one more half an hour to go on this broadcast. Let me update our viewers. In the last minute or so, we received another update from France. The Prime Minister has reached his hotel in the city. We'll get you the latest visuals as and when they become available. If you're just tuning in, you're watching a continuing coverage here on DD India of the Prime Minister's ongoing visit to Nice, France, as part of a two-nation European tour of France and Slovakia. We still have with us our guest, Ambassador Veena Sikri. Ambassador Sikri, before we talk about other issues, including the G7 summit, the EU relationship and Slovakia, let me talk about another important pillar of the partnership, and that is the diaspora. Now, do you have any lasting memories of your time spent in Paris? I ask you this because in Paris, in the next few days, the Prime Minister is scheduled to address the Indian diaspora in the city there. How effectively is New Delhi translating its growing diaspora footprint in Europe into sustainable lobbying power, as it were, to advance its economic and trade interests?
Yeah, actually, diaspora in Paris is very interesting. They're a very dynamic diaspora, and they come from some of the overseas French possessions, and they also are they have come from Pondicherry. A lot of them have come from Pondicherry and other French colonial possessions in India, and they have integrated very well, and they are in all aspects of French life, in academia, in the cultural world, and actually, let's say the touristic exchanges, the people-to-people exchanges between France and India are among the most dynamic aspects of the relationship. Or the French love coming to India; they come in large numbers to Rajasthan and so on. Indians love going there, and everywhere you find that it is the diaspora which acts as a living bridge between the two sides. And I think that this is a very important aspect, the way in which Prime Minister Modi has built in the diaspora interaction into every visit of his abroad, and doing it in a very dynamic manner. It's not just one routine speech or address and that's it. No, it's not like that at all. It is very dynamic because each time the interaction with the diaspora yields new ideas about how to carry the relationship forward and how the diaspora feels it should be done. We've seen, for example, that in America, for example, the diaspora is facing a very difficult situation right now. And after decades of the diaspora from India in the US being in a very comfortable position, being very much welcome there, this time there is a kind of a interaction and a response from MAGA and some other groups that is making some members of the diaspora very uncomfortable. But again, even then, the answer is to continue to interact with the diaspora.
Indeed.
And to interact with them to get the feedback, and then through one's own bilateral interactions with the leaders of that country to then build it in. So this is the important part that Prime Minister Modi is able to do very successfully, because he understands fully how the diaspora are in every way a living bridge. They are there, they are part of the community. They can explain to us, to our leaders, to individuals, the sensitivities of the French side or the American side, and on the other hand, where the relationship can develop positively, whether it is in academia, whether it's in the trade, whether it is in manufacturing, transfer of technology. So all these are ways in which the diaspora's presence and value is really very strong. And France is no exception at all.
Right.
The numbers are not so big in France, but they're extremely dynamic. And all over, in every part of France, you will find them. And so they're gathering in Paris on the last day of Prime Minister Modi's visit. And he will have the interaction with them as a very important part of his visit.
Indeed. So, Ambassador Sikri, we have discussed the India-France relationship at some length. We've spoken about the special global strategic partnership, civil nuclear cooperation, defense ties, space cooperation, the Indo-Pacific and the diaspora. We have to cover also at some length on the G7 leg of his visit, where he will travel next to Evian and also onwards to Slovakia. We'll talk about all that in just a bit. But talking about the G7 summit to begin with, Ambassador Sikri, you spoke about in one of your opening remarks the possibility, the probability rather, of the two leaders of India and the US meeting on the margins of the G7. What do you make of the optics and likely outcomes from the much anticipated, if I may put it that way, the Trump-Modi meeting on the margins of the G7?
Well, as I said, it's been announced by the White House, but from the Indian side, there is no confirmation. But certainly, I think that it's fairly likely. Maybe it will take place. And it's a good thing. Why not? Because it's, I think, been more than a year since, I think February 25 was when Prime Minister was in Washington, D.C., very soon after President Trump's swearing in. And there was a very, very good bilateral exchange and a good visit by our Prime Minister. But we've seen between then and now, there's been a lot of turmoil, Operation Sindoor, then, after that what happened, and then now Field Marshal Asim Munir claiming, all kinds of process. So it has been a time of momentous turmoil, actually. And then we've seen, of course, what has been happening in West Asia ever since February 28th of this year. And it's on again, off again, whether the deal is going to come through. And the impact on India's energy security, the impact on Asian energy security, and on economic growth as a consequence. Inflation and prices. Although India, I must say, has adjusted very well, and our government has been able to diversify its supplies. Now more than 40 countries are supplying. Even from Venezuela, we're getting. Brazil is going to become a very important energy partner with India. And we have diversified in a very, very important way.
Right.
But this is only because, we have good relations with so many countries. Our Prime Minister has a rapport with so many leaders of all these countries. We now have this momentous moment when our Prime Minister has completed 12 years in office, and he's now the longest serving Prime Minister of India. So this is gained for him a tremendous amount of global respect. And we've seen all the messages pouring in, and all the respect that is shown through these messages that have come from leaders all over the world, from President Trump and many years. And I think all this will be reflected when our Prime Minister is there at the G7 and he will speak on what is happening, because we know the subject matter of G7 covers all these the impact of the war, the impact on the economies of the country, and how the economies of the G7, they need the growth. Let's face it. The economies of the G7, they need the growth, but they cannot depend entirely on themselves for the growth. So they need the outreach. They need the outreach, they need the markets.
Absolutely.
That's very, very true. And India now, I think, has been so successful in concluding FTAs, free trade agreements, bilateral trade deals with so many of the countries. Of course, the one with the USA is still pending. It's, almost there, but they say next month it will be done. So, it's a very important way, whereas earlier the focus was on multilateral agreements, and India found that we never got really anything much out of it, because other countries, notably China, was able to make use of these multilateral agreements to get their goods into India, and we've seen, for example, with the India-ASEAN FTA, that this has been a big problem, and that's why we're seeking a renegotiation of the India-ASEAN FTA. So I think it's these issues which will make our Prime Minister's statement at the G7 a very long, much awaited statement. People will wait to see what Prime Minister Modi will say about not only the impact on the Indian economy and how we expect the response from the countries of the G7, but also the G20 countries, how all the countries of G20, I'm sorry, not G20, the Global South, all the countries of the Global South are really suffering enormously. India with our neighboring countries, we are even giving emergency petroleum supplies or diesel supplies, to our neighbors. So it's an aspect which will affect or is affecting economic growth in these countries. India, touch wood, has been able to achieve close to 8% rate of growth, and even a little beyond 8% in the last quarter of the previous financial year. So I think we have so far weathered the storm well, but it's not over. It's not over by any means. And there are shocks coming to the economy all the time. And we have to be very careful about our supply chains. We have to be very careful about our, the connectivity. And you can see how India has been working even on these global maritime supply chains. We already have the Chennai-Vladivostok maritime corridor, but now when Prime Minister was in Norway and they had the meeting of the Arctic Council, we're looking at extending that, coming from Chennai to Vladivostok to Murmansk in North Russia, and then going off into the Arctic region. So the Arctic area space is going to be available for navigation for much longer parts of the year, and India wants to take full advantage of that. So the situation is so serious, so dire because of the Ukraine-Russia conflict on one hand and the Russia conflict on the other, that there can be no letting up in India's constant approach and discussion and seeking out new and more resilient supply chains, new and more resilient methods of communication, and seeking out, pointing out to the G7 that they have to take account of the Global South. They can't just do it because of something.
Absolutely true.
Consideration, but they're not taking enough account of the Global South. And we know that in the coming years, the Global North cannot grow without the Global South. So that interdependence is so strong.
Absolutely.
The period of globalization in some ways is over, because, I think that nobody talks about globalization anymore. But the period of interdependence is not over.
Absolutely.
Globalization was the methodology to bring the South, enslave them, as it were, with the Global North, so that, they would be dependent on the North for exports and for maintaining their supply chains. But now, with the globalization being over, we're looking at interdependence, which must be mutually beneficial. It cannot be just for one country. So that is why we are looking at these discussions and, saying that you cannot impose unilateral sanctions, you cannot, prevent us, like, telling India, don't buy from here, don't buy from there. I think all these issues will come up, maybe sometimes in the bilateral, sometimes in the statement which our Prime Minister makes. So it's an enormous amount of discussion that is there. It's an honor to our Prime Minister that, the 8th time that we are being invited, and Prime Minister Modi is so well respected that he
Right.
is after to participate in these meetings every year.
Ambassador Sikri, you make a number of valid points there. We'll talk about the global south and the supply chains in just a bit, but let me pause and ask you about the big picture emerging from the G7 insofar as India is concerned. As you rightly said, India is attending the G7 summit and Prime Minister Modi's seventh consecutive summit. Am I correct, Ambassador Sikri?
Yeah,
As
that's
a
right.
special invitee. So does it signal that India is becoming indispensable to the G7, or that the G7 remains hesitant to formally expand its executive core to include India?
You know, I think India is indispensable. I think India today, you know, the world cannot go without India today.
Right.
And the world is looking towards India, for partnerships, for bringing investments. Like, you know, so many companies in America, when President Trump was, putting all the restrictions, whether it is H-1B visa, whether it is to get people to come to work in those companies. But the companies then said immediately that if they can't come to USA, then we are going to India.
Right.
And now proposal to bring up the data centers with India. So in that sense, the indispensability of India is well recognized and accepted even. But there is no doubt about it, a strong political resistance to letting India play the role that is rightly India's, and that India has proven that the role of being this global indispensable market and facilitator, and where we welcome investments and we have the market to buy the products, and we also have the place where these companies from abroad, many who have been in China and now who want to go out of China because of political reasons, to come here. But we had, for example, in the Raisina dialogue, one of the countries, very big countries, said quite clearly in the Raisina dialogue in Delhi in February, that, we made the mistake with China once and we let them grow so big. And I'm going to make the same mistake with India.
Right.
So this revealed their own thinking, that they want the cooperation with India. But India is very patient about it. India is very calm, and I think our Prime Minister is very statesmanlike on this subject, very wise, and he's able to know exactly with each leader as he interacts multilaterally or bilaterally or regionally, how to project what India is doing and how that country can work so well with India. That is why you see today the real burgeoning of the cooperation between India and Europe.
Right.
We've seen how External Affairs Minister of Jaishankar has been in Europe so many times. We've seen our Prime Minister, who was just recently, in the northern part of Europe, and now he's in France and going to visit the Slovak Republic as well. So I think Europe has the potential to emerge as a pillar. The EU, as such, has the potential to emerge as a pillar of the world. I mean, if you talk about a multipolar world, because it's very that India today is basing its interaction on the basis of strategic autonomy. We're looking at multi-alignment.
Right.
Aligning with each different group based on our mutual benefit and mutual understanding and respect for each other. So with Europe, we see now the potential for building a strong partnership. But Europe, internally, they're still a little divided. They really have to get to, the Ukraine issue is something that is tearing them apart because it is hurting their economies, and they are going to spend much more on defense now. And, we don't know what the impact that's going to have on their overall economic structure they have built over these years, especially the social welfare, the common agricultural policy of the EU, how will that be impacted? There's so many issues that they are grappling with.
Indeed.
Relationship between France and Germany, how is that going to work out? So these are very, sensitive aspects of the situation within Europe. But India does feel that at this point, we have to build up our economic.
Okay.
And I've always felt, even during the time when I was in Paris, I felt so strongly that Paris, the French, particularly French agriculture, they have a lot of appropriate medium-level technology that can be very valuable for India's farmers. For example, in terms of even simple things like food processing, preliminary food processing, when you can even grade your vegetable and food, put them in the cold storage, get them for export, and I'm not even talking of export to third countries, yes, but even within your own country to different regions, to go from, let's say, Uttar Pradesh to Tamil Nadu, it requires a whole supply chain, So these things where the Indian farmer, for his benefit, this is what he needs. This is what he needs. He needs that kind of appropriate technology where he can benefit, because the French farmers do a lot. I mean, they have a tremendously dynamic agricultural structure, and they're able to use these medium technologies, and they're willing to export them to India easily.
Right.
Even in terms of renewable energies, we have enormous cooperation with France, and they are an active dynamic member of the International Solar Alliance. President Macron has been such a strong partner for India in that, in the International Solar Alliance. So, they really, these aspects of a discussion with the smaller countries of Europe are very important for India. And I think that building the support with Europe has given India a very a dynamic push to India's exports, to attracting FDI from these countries, and the new partnerships, without depending all the time just only on the many Indian exporters depend so much on the US market. But when the bolt from the blue of the tariffs and the uncertainty of the trade deal came in, India has really adjusted very well. Our Prime Minister has been leading this adjustment and talking to so many countries in Europe, as you've seen even on this visit, so that the impact of the problems of the trade tariffs and the trade deal has not been felt. It has been felt to some extent, there's no doubt. But the resilience of it, that you can quickly, our overall exports have gone up, even though exports to USA may have gone down.
Right. Ambassador Sikri, we'll talk about the G7 summit in the context of the supply chains and the global south. But before that, in the last few minutes, we've heard from Prime Minister Modi himself on X. If I can quickly update our viewers, he says on X, I have just landed in Nice. Beyond Nice, this visit to France includes programs in Evian and Paris. It'll be marked by bilateral and multilateral meetings aimed at strengthening India's bonds of friendship with its key development partners. He goes on to say, I look forward to meeting President Macron tomorrow, that's Sunday, and being present at Bharat Innovate. That's the tweet, the message put out by Prime Minister Modi on X. Right, coming back to the issue of in the context of the G7, the Global South and supply chains, Ambassador, two quick follow-up questions. One, do you think New Delhi would like to translate the broad interests of the Global South into binding G7 economic commitments on technology transfer or debt relief? Number one. Number two, talking about the value chains, considering Western ambitions to decouple from China, what concrete standard would India pitch to guarantee that it can step in as a resilient alternative manufacturing hub, Ambassador?
Well, India has been working very hard in that direction, there's no doubt, because we've been working, say the ease of doing business, the global index on ease of doing business, where India's position is steadily improving. But still, there are a lot of additional demands from the Western countries, and we've seen all the time that India is responding actively. Recently on the capital gains tax, for example, there were some concessions given to the foreign investors. And all these are consistently something that has to be looked at. We've seen because of the turmoil in West Asia and turmoil in global markets, investors have been withdrawing some of their capital from India, especially the institutions, the FII, the foreign institutional investors. So India is to do its best to bring them back and to keep them engaged with the Indian market. Now, with China, it's a very difficult issue, because we ourselves want to maintain our economic relationship with China, because on some aspects of the supply chain, we are dependent on China. And even things like batteries, and now we're looking at how to increase the battery production in India and so on. But then again, the technology supply becomes a problem from China in many cases. And then, China is not happy to have some of the investors, you saw the iPhones, the Apple phones and all that. When they come to India, they don't like it at all. At the same time, we have to maintain our good relations with China. At the same time, Europe sees China as a difficult partner for them and possibly a security threat also. Countries like in Europe, in Canada and others, they are dealing with China. They have active relationship, but they're also taking action when they find, China is in many ways subversing some aspects, on drugs, on fentanyl and things like that. So it's a very complex relationship, very complex working out. While India does speak definitely on behalf of the global South, but each country has to negotiate bilaterally on this. And India, on its part, is helping the countries of Africa in many ways, where we can help them directly with investments, with vaccines, with medical supplies and other things, but also, be partners for them. For example, I think that Japan and India can work together in many countries of Africa. France and India could also work together in many countries of Africa or in many countries of Asia as well. Because France has the technology and they could have India to work with the countries of whether it is Asia, whether it is Africa, as intermediaries, sometimes in the English language, Africa, Anglophone Africa, sometimes in, say, the CMLV countries of ASEAN, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam. So, there are many ways, many dynamic ways of creating the cooperation. And I think India presenting it like that is what makes a big difference. So that these countries also, they say that, yes, not only to work with India, but working with India can be a bridge to working with other parts of the world. Right. Of the global South, other countries of the global South. And that is where India, because India then touches so many countries of the global South, we know where they want to, where their interests are, what they want to pursue. And we take that forward with our leadership whenever they go on these foreign visits. And that's what makes it very, very attractive. So even beyond what comes in the joint statement or the joint declaration, beyond that, there's so many other aspects which are taken up and have a very good response.
Ambassador, if we do stay on, let me pull up some more news for the benefit of our viewers who are watching this broadcast. Since technology is in the air, India is all set to witness a journey of transformation in the deep tech sector as it continues to stride forward on the path to progress with a clear vision of becoming a developed nation by the year 2047 and taking the India-France ties to a new level. Now, the maiden edition of Bharat Innovates is all set to be hosted in Nice on 14th June. Take a look at this next report to understand more about this maiden event.
साल 2026 भारत फ्रांस संबंधों के लिए एक अति विशेष वर्ष है। इसमें पीपल टू पीपल एक्सचेंज और गहरे होंगे। इंडस्ट्री टू इंडस्ट्री पार्टनरशिप का विस्तार होगा। जून 2026 में फ्रांस में भारत इनोवेट्स 2026 के तहत हम भारत के बेहतरीन टेक स्टार्टअप दुनिया के सामने रखेंगे, जो हेल्थ, क्लाइमेट, सिक्योरिटी जैसे ग्लोबल चैलेंजेस के समाधान बना रहे हैं।
India stands at a defining moment in its development journey, one where innovation is no longer merely an aspiration, but a fundamental driver of economic growth, global competitiveness, and societal transformation. In Bharat's Amrit Kaal, where the mission is to become a developed nation by the year 2047, the Government of India has launched Bharat Innovates 2026 during the India-France Year of Innovation. It is a national program of the Ministry of Education, Government of India, designed as a global accelerator for innovations from Indian higher education institutions, thereby building a long-term collaboration bridge between India's innovation ecosystem and global stakeholders. Announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the 17th of February 2026 at the inauguration of the India-France Year of Innovation, the maiden event extends invitation to global leaders, CEOs, investors, and universities to collaborate with India's innovation ecosystem. Bharat Innovates 2026. The maiden edition takes India's top 120 deep tech startups to Nice, France, to catalyze pilots, co-development, investments, research partnerships, manufacturing, and market access. along with 15 premier Indian higher education institutions, including the IITs and IISc, and 5+ scientific and strategic institutions will come together. Bharat Innovates will serve as a privileged gateway to the Indian innovation ecosystem, revolving around 13 frontier technology themes. These include semiconductors, biotechnology, space and defense, healthcare and medtech, advanced computing, AI, cloud, quantum, next-gen communications, advanced materials and critical minerals, energy, sustainability and climate, smart cities and mobility, blue economy, agri and food technologies, disaster management and resilience. For global stakeholders, Bharat Innovates 2026 will provide an opportunity to build sustained engagement with India's innovation ecosystem through investor-grade deal flow, fast-track partnerships, research access, problem-to-solution bridge, global soft landing routes, R&D pipeline. As the world navigates rapid technological disruption, climate imperatives, and evolving supply chains, India is emerging not just as a participant in these changes, but as a leader shaping the future. The narrative has moved beyond Make in India to embrace a more ambitious vision. Create in India, innovate for the world.
French President Emmanuel Macron had famously said, "The question is no longer if India innovates, the question is who will innovate with India." We are at Palais d'Exposition, the venue of Bharat Innovates, a unique global platform which is going to bring together and join the ecosystems of higher education, startups, and talent mobility of India and France. With camera person Aniket Dubey, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India, Nice.
Right, so you're watching the continuing coverage here on DD India of Prime Minister Modi's ongoing visit to Nice in France as part of his two-nation tour of France and Slovakia. He has landed in Nice. He was received by a welcoming party that comprised the mayor of the city as well as other senior officials, including the Minister of Education. We still have with us our guest, Ambassador Veena Sikri, to take you, the viewer, through the remainder of this broadcast and talk about other issues, including the G7 summit and the Prime Minister's visit to Slovakia as well. Ambassador Sikri, we were discussing about the G7. In that context, now G7 discussions, we are told, will take place just after the conclusion of the India-EU free trade agreement negotiations. How does this visit help translate that trade framework into actual investment flows on the ground, Ambassador?
No, I didn't catch that. Could you please just repeat that question? Sorry.
What I meant to ask you is about the G7 discussions, which will take place just after the conclusion of the India-EU FTA negotiations. So in that context, how would this visit of the Prime Minister help translate that trade framework into actual investment flows on the ground?
You know, I mean, the G7, I don't think will be in that sense directly involved with the implementation of the India-EU FTA, because what happens once the FTA is signed off on, once you sign it off, then it's the companies themselves who have to, get together their counterparts and work out the individual deals, whether it is export, import, or investments and so on. And for that, a lot of that is already ready. Companies are waiting; they know what the potential is. But I don't think that would come up at the G7. Of course, they will take the conclusion of the FTAs. We have the EFTA, which we've done with the smaller European countries, and there's so many other good deals we have, FTAs we have concluded, which are benefiting India. But where we do talk in the G7, in the bilaterals, of course, yes, it will come up. In the bilaterals, they will be discussed in detail, like between India and Canada, for example, where again, we could be very near to completing the FTA by the end of this year. Again, those will come up in the bilaterals. But in the general statement that our Prime Minister would make at the G7, he would talk in general terms about the FTAs we have concluded, indicating our willingness to increase our trade and to welcome goods from these countries for the Indian market, which is very good. I mean, the Indian consumers are waiting for it, the exporters in Europe are waiting for it, and I think their markets in China are becoming a little more constrained because consumption is going down in China. But here in India, so far, the impact of the high growth rate is still very visible all over the economy. And because of that, the message by our Prime Minister would be very valid. But for example, with Japan is going to be there. I'm sure there'll be a bilateral also. But you have to actually talk to the Japanese companies and get them to come to India and overcome their hesitancies and overcome their concerns. Whether it's about greenfield investment, setting up new factories, availability of the maintenance of the supply chain, the infrastructure, and so on. So this becomes a different aspect altogether, the implementation of the FTAs.
Right. So if you're just joining us, let me recap the news we are tracking here on DD India. The Prime Minister has landed in Nice. He has also reached his hotel where he will meet with the diaspora. We'll get you those visuals as and when they become available. We still have with us our guest, Ambassador Veena Sikri. Ambassador Sikri, let's also talk now about other issues, including, for instance, the personal chemistry, the rapport that the two leaders enjoy, Prime Minister Modi and President Macron. Now, Prime Minister Modi is one leader who invests a lot of time, energy, effort into establishing a rapport with other world leaders, and President Macron is not no different. Prime Minister Modi, in fact, was the first leader to call on President Macron upon his re-election in France. So the relationship has stood the test of time. How do you view the Modi-Macron relationship, especially given the fact that President Macron will demit office next year? Will this momentum continue into the next term of whoever succeeds him?
I think so, definitely, because yes, the relationship is very important. The bilateral rapport between the leaders is significant, and that sets the tone, and that facilitates all the agreements that are concluded, whether from the Rafael deal to the deal on technology and innovation. Everything is given that momentum, and the rapport between the leaders becomes the catalyst, the vital catalyst that facilitates everything else. But it is the once you get the momentum into place and the projects start rolling, such as, like, for example, if the Rafael deal is signed off on, then it continues for many years. The momentum is there. It doesn't mean that you have to not build up a rapport with a new leader. Of course you have, and you have to build up the rapport to continue the momentum, and you have to also make sure that they are going to support whatever the previous leader has concluded. So that the vitality of the bilateral understanding at the summit level, at the the leadership level, is really an important, the vital impetus. But Prime Minister Modi doesn't leave it only at that level. He does that, and then he also cultivates at the people-to-people level. And I think one of the important aspects of Prime Minister Modi's last 12 years, has been his focus on soft power projection. Because he realizes quite correctly that you have to develop the hard power. Hard power is absolutely important, whether it is your defense security hard power, whether it is your industrial manufacturing, and hard power in the absolute infrastructure assets that you have within the country. That is vital. But the soft power projection is what actually brings the people here. The leaders come on there because of bilateral rapport. The business leaders come to look at the opportunities. But today, youngsters who are in university, who are just on their first job, if they are going to spend their next decades of their working years considering India as an investment opportunity, then they must have that proper appreciation, the positive appreciation of what India has to offer in terms of economy and investment, but also as a place to live in, as a beautiful country, as a country with, we are proud of our heritage and civilization, but we must make the visitors to India equally happy and welcoming of this. So this is an important aspect that Prime Minister Modi has also been focusing on the soft power projection. And I think this combination of definitely working on the hard power, without that there is no future at all, but side by side working on the soft power projection. So, like even in Nice, he will meet the diaspora there, then in Paris, he will meet the diaspora there, and everywhere. And the message is that, you have to be the living bridge. But even he meets the young people from that country. You've seen everywhere he goes, when he goes to the hotel and there's a cultural program, a spontaneous cultural program by the Indian community, many times the performers are from that country itself. They're performing the Kathak or the Bharatnatyam, but They are ones who learned it and imbibed it. So this combination of soft and hard power is what carries it forward. You've seen, countries like Britain, for example, they spend huge amounts on the British Council on projecting themselves, way beyond the size of the economy and the size of the population. America does it through the American Center. Japan does it through the Japan Foundation. So this is something that Prime Minister Modi also attaches a very high importance to, and he always makes it a key part of every visit, and this contributes greatly to the overall success.
Indeed. So in conclusion, Ambassador Sikri, looking at the complete arc of this European tour spanning the G7 and tech events in France and a strategic opening to Slovakia, in your estimation, what would be some of the big takeaways or outcomes in terms of the Prime Minister's outreach to Europe at large?
I think it's this very, very welcome combination of high technology, because Bharat innovates. That is really giving the message that where India has the capacity to innovate, our startups, the unicorns that we have, and how they are projecting this to the world. So they're showing it to the French, not only through the individual India-oriented Bharat Innovates event in Nice, but then subsequently in Paris as well, through the Viva Tech presentation, where India will have a national pavilion together with all the other countries of Europe. And there too we will project. So I think that Viva Tech has a great potential for conclusion of direct deals. So, everybody hears about India doing very well in IT and AI, but then you actually see for yourself where that India's success and brilliance in IT and AI can be relevant for your country. So what deals, what business can you get out of it? The business end is very important, So I think this visit, this combination that Prime Minister Modi has planned with the Bharat Innovates, with Viva Tech and others, is to actually make India's prowess in IT and AI translate into business deals and make other countries realize what India has and how it can benefit them. They should come to the deals. So I think this multi-pronged approach, not only the leadership level meetings, the bilaterally at the G7 meeting with
All right,
Trump.
Ambassador Sikri, do stay on. I am getting some more visuals of the Prime Minister's engagements in Nice. If you're just joining us, these are the latest visuals of a welcome reception organized in honor of the Prime Minister at his hotel in Nice, France. You can see the Indian diaspora come out in large numbers to welcome the Prime Minister and organize a special dance performance for him. Right, so as you can see, the Prime Minister being welcomed by the diaspora in Nice, France. The Prime Minister is on a two-nation European tour of France and Slovakia. He's now in Nice, where he will jointly, along with President Emmanuel Macron of France, inaugurate the maiden edition of Bharat Innovates tech event on Sunday. And these are the visuals of a special dance performance. Right, so if I can talk over these visuals as we play them out for you, this special dance performance is titled Echoes of Tradition, Spirits of Innovation. The presentation features a Kathak artist, Isabel Anna, daughter of Padma Shri awardee Milena Salvini, alongside Odissi dancer Chloe Romero and Bharatnatyam exponent Mariana Bayadine, blending the rhythmic brilliance of northern India with the grace and elegance of eastern and southern classical traditions. The dancers performed Charishnu, a composition by Pandit Madhub Mudgal. Right, so just to recap the news we are tracking here on DD India, Prime Minister Modi is being welcomed in Nice with a special cultural performance featuring 3 accomplished European artists who are trained in Indian classical dance traditions. It comprises French Kathak dancer Isabelle Anna. She's among the rare Western artists officially recognized by the Government of India. She is the daughter of Padma Shri awardee Milena Salvini and a pioneer of Indian arts in France. In fact, her mother founded the Centre Mandapa in Paris, a leading Indian arts institution. Now, the Centre Mandapa's 50th anniversary featured in Prime Minister Modi's monthly radio broadcast called Man Ki Baat. Isabelle Anna began studying Bharatnatyam at the age of 5 before pursuing advanced training through prestigious Indo-French and ICCR scholarships in India. Isabelle trained at the Kathak Kendra in New Delhi under Pandit Jaikishan Maharaj. She earned a postgraduate diploma in Kathak in 2006. And after spending 9 years in India combining performance and research, she founded the Kaleidoscope Dance Company in Paris. She's performed at the Khajuraho Festival and other international venues as well. She leads the dance performance, as I said, in honor of the Prime Minister in Nice. And here you can see the Prime Minister interact with the diaspora at his hotel in the French Mediterranean city of Nice. The diaspora has turned out in large numbers to greet and meet the Prime Minister, who, as I said, is on the first leg of his 6-nation European visit. He's now in Nice, France, where he will jointly, along with President Emmanuel Macron of France, inaugurate the maiden edition of a tech event titled Bharat Innovates 2026. So there you saw the Prime Minister interact with the diaspora in Nice upon his arrival in the city ahead of the much anticipated inauguration of the maiden edition of Bharat Innovates along with President Emmanuel Macron of France tomorrow, that Sunday, in the city. Right, as the organizers and participants prepare for Bharat Innovates, Shubhendu Ghosh, my colleague, brings us a glimpse of the historic venue and preparations for the mega event. Take a look.
Nice in France is set to host Bharat Innovates 2026. We are getting you an exclusive peek into the venue of this mega event. As you can see around me, preparations are in full swing for this mega event. This is Palais de Exposition, one of city's best-known exhibition center. It is a classic example of French post-war, post-Second World War architecture. Now, what is special about this event center? For that, you'll have to look at the ceiling. It's unique for its self-supporting vault made of concrete, so there are no internal pillars to support this mega structure. Now, for an exhibition, this opens up more space for exhibitors to really play around with space in a better manner. It's spread over 17,000 square meters and is all set to showcase India's startup ecosystem. Bharat Innovates is a unique platform created by India's Ministry of Education to connect the nation's startup and innovation ecosystem with the world. Over 120 leading deep tech startups of India will be participating in this event. It will also see representation from over 20 premier institutions of higher education from India who will present their innovation to the world. Now, what makes this event complete is that leading global investment powerhouses are also collaborating to make this event a grand success. As we speak, startups and organizers are engaged in final preparations for the exhibition. I'm at the booth of Agnikul right now. You can see that rocket. Agnikul is one of India's leading space startups. Now, startups like these make India's startup innovation ecosystem one of the largest in the world. The projected value of this ecosystem is more than $1.5 trillion by 2030 and is set to impact billions of lives. So the stage is getting set for Bharat Innovates 2026. The mega exhibition will be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President of France Emmanuel Macron on June 14th. It will mark a decisive milestone in India-France tech partnership. With camera person Aniket Dubey, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India, Nice.
Next, Shubhendu Ghosh takes us through the historical and present-day significance of the Mediterranean city of Nice.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to visit Nice in France. Let's learn more about this historic Mediterranean city. It is the main city square of Nice and it is known by its unique artistic touches. You can see those grand red buildings, these assembly of statues, and look at this particularly checkered floor. All of this built nearly 200 years ago. Nice is today the 5th largest city of France. It was founded in 350 BC by Greek mariners. In 1939, when World War II broke out, this city served as an important place of refuge for foreigners, particularly Jews fleeing the Nazi invasion of Eastern Europe. Nice is famous for this promenade. It's called Promenade des Anglais, literally walk of the English. This beautiful city has served as an inspiration for many artists. Painters like Marc Chagall, writers like Friedrich Nietzsche lived here. UNESCO gave it the heritage status, calling it the winter resort town of the French Riviera. In the 21st century, Nice is also important from the perspective of blue economy. I'm next to the beautiful Mediterranean Sea. France and Costa Rica hosted the United Nations Oceans Conference in 2025. India supported this Nice plan for a resilient and sustainable ocean future for the mankind. with camera person Aniket Dubey, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India, Nice.
So let me recap the news we are tracking here on this broadcast. Prime Minister Modi has reached Nice, France, where he received a warm welcome from the Indian diaspora. Right, my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh spoke to India's ambassador to France, Sanjeev Singla. Take a listen.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, an official visit to France. To talk about it, we have with us India's ambassador to France, Ambassador Sanjeev Singla. Ambassador, welcome to DD India. Let's first talk about the very ambitious Bharat Innovates, the manner in which it provides a platform to Indian innovators and talent.
I think, to put simply, this is the largest deep tech event being held by India, organized by India, outside of India. So in a way, France is host to a historical first. And I think to understand the significance of it, we have to keep in mind broadly three aspects. One is that for many years now, India and France, our bilateral relationship has been moving in a slightly different orbit, qualitatively different orbit. And you would recall that when President Macron had visited India in February, we had elevated our relationship to special global strategic partnership. Now, there was a reason to do so, and the reason had to do with the highly volatile and uncertain global environment around us. And technology is a key part of it, the way it can impact our society, our economies, and we share a common belief that this enormous revolution, if I can use the word, which is happening in technological terms, has a huge multiplier impact in our economies. And how can we use it for social good, for common good for all? And which is why when we held the AI Summit in Delhi, our motto was Sarvjan Hitaya Sarvjan Sukhaya. So that is one, to how we can harness this technology for common good, to give greater resilience to our lives, to our economies. So that is one point. Second, you would also recall that when President Macron had visited India, both the leaders had inaugurated the Year of Innovation. The year 2026 is being celebrated as the Year of Innovation, and this is taking a step forward in that direction. When I say innovation, the innovation spans many areas. It's not merely science and technology, it spans artificial intelligence, creative economy, healthcare, sustainable development. And three, over the last many years now, India has emerged one of the largest startup ecosystems in the world. I think we are now third or fourth largest ecosystem in the world, startup ecosystem in the world, with over 200,000 startups and I think over 120 unicorns and over 400 incubators. So the idea is if we can showcase that here, and this is slightly different from a normal startup event because this also brings to the table startups plus our research institutions and investors all in one platform and to a region which is a very vibrant region. I mean, France is one of the foremost economies and it has tremendous sophistication when it comes to the depths of its technological prowess. And we are trying to see how we can deepen the conversation between our two countries when it comes to innovation ties.
Right, sir. And you mentioned the manner in which the ties have been elevated to special global strategic ties between India and France. From that perspective, at a bilateral level, what are the expectations forward? What does the road ahead look like for the two countries?
As I said, this meeting would take place just a day or two ahead of the G7 summit, where global leaders are congregating to discuss issues of importance to all of us. And I think this will be the 7th consecutive time that the Prime Minister would be participating in that. And again, the sheer scale of changes happening around us. It's a moment which is ripe with possibilities. It's a moment which is also ripe with challenges, and therefore it's useful to have a dialogue, an ongoing dialogue at this level, to see how we can shape going ahead, shape the developments going ahead, how we can cope with the challenges which are emerging. And to that extent, I'm sure the two leaders will discuss bilateral issues, regional issues, as well as global issues, going beyond the traditional pillars, which are defense, space, and nuclear. And I'm sure there would be other issues, whether it's people-to-people relations, whether it's science and technology, whether it's others.
Ambassador Singla, thank you very much for speaking with DD India.
And with that, it's a wrap on this special broadcast. But news continues here on DD India. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.